Depart from the docks. "Simon, please, we can talk about this," were the last words Simon heard before he slammed the door. Suitcase in hand and no direction in mind, Simon started walking farther and farther away from his home. He couldn't describe how he was feeling. It's all his fault, Simon thought to himself. If he didn't... Simon seethed, too angry to complete his thought. Needless to say, he was irrationally enraged at his father. But after so many years of harassment, Simon was fed up. As his home slowly faded from sight, he wondered if he could ever return. Would Simon ever see his father again? He didn't have time to think about that. Simon was just focused on getting away. Away from all the horrible people. Away from his father. Away from his life. He could start anew, right? How hard could that be? Simon didn't want to admit it, but he was actually very anxious about this. Where would he even go? What was he going to do all by himself? Well, there was one place that came to mind. Simon walked until he found himself at the docks. It was a little different from the ones in Marseille, but it still filled him with immense nostalgia. Maybe I should... No. Simon bounced a thought back and forth in his mind. He stood back and watched the big ships get loaded with people immigrating. Would it be too far? Simon thought to himself. Could I really do that? He sat down and pondered about the possibility of hopping on a boat and running away. To a different country? Or just to a different state? He didn't know yet. Simon looked down at the stuffed suitcase he had brought along with him. He could run away. He brought some of his father's money to help him restart his life. Well, maybe not brought, more like took. Simon suddenly felt guilt wash over him. This is so wrong. I should just go back and apologize. There was a moment of silence in his mind. Dieu, que dois faire? And nothing responded to him. Simon shook his head. Well, it's not like he expected a response anyway. Who would ever be foolish enough to expect such a thing? Simon's heart ached with a strange feeling that he didn't know how to describe. He let his lips twinge into a smirk, just for a moment, before settling down again. He's the one who stuffed me on a boat and forced me to move here in the first place, Simon thought. It's only fair that I set it straight again. New York? No. I'm sick and tired of America. Japan? Mon Dieu, that's too far. It'll take months. He then landed eyes on the last ship departing for that day. Hawaii. I'd like to go to Hawaii. That was where his mother was from. He had always wanted to see it. Simon knew he didn't really know much of any Hawaiian languages, but he thought he could manage well enough. He steadily walked forward and began to walk up the steps to the door after purchasing a ticket. Simon looked behind him one last time, thinking about the life he was leaving behind. Was this really the right choice? He didn't have time to fully think that out before the rest of the passengers shoved him on board. Simon walked up to the deck, leaning his elbows on the railing. He looked out into the world, thinking everything through. I could manage, right? How hard is it to start a new life on an island of which I don't know anyone on? His heart skipped a beat, realizing how ridiculous that sounded. Oh, Papa, Simon thought. Why must my heart sway me so much? He felt separated from himself, as if Simon split in half when he left his father. His blue eyes looked over the deck into the ocean, reflecting the color. Now, at 22 years old, his facial hair grew wiry yet short. The breeze swayed Simon's beard softly like a gale floating through the trees. Many thoughts ate away at his head. He needed something, anything to distract him from his guilty conscience. Hello. Simon slowly turned his head to look at the man who just walked up next to him. Hello? Simon said, very unsure of what this interaction was going to turn into. What are you going to Hawaii for? Oh, Simon took a deep breath. I don't know. Well, you can't just not know, the man playfully jabbed at him. I'm going to Hawaii to see my sweetie. He reached into his pocket and unfolded a photograph and held it out for Simon to look at. In the photo was presumably the man's wife, who was in Hawaii, apparently. Simon just politely nodded and hoped that this man would stop talking to him. His social ineptitude made him dread situations like this. Well then, how do you expect to start a new life if you can't even speak to people? Simon's inner voice reminded him. He placed his hands over his eyes and rubbed them, his glasses sliding over his fingers. Simon felt a pang in his stomach as the man continued to talk about his wife. He started to think about how he was middle-aged, no wife, no children, and now no place to live. He wondered if he would ever have that one day. A love, someone to call home. Peut-être que je devrais rentrer à la maison. What? He had forgotten that the man was still trying to speak to him. Excuse me, I must rest. Simon made a quick excuse as he hastily left. Simon made way to the sleeping quarters within the bowels of the ship. It wasn't glamorous, far from it, in fact. There were rows of bunk beds for the passengers to sleep on. It made him oddly nostalgic for his old ship, his old crew. Simon settled on the bottom bunk, hugging his suitcase tight. He felt tired. Admittedly, laying on a hard mattress with a room full of people wasn't the most comfortable position, but regardless of that, Simon's eyes began to flutter closed. His consciousness slowly got pulled away from reality and drifted off into sleep. There was nothing. Well, nothing at first. Simon couldn't see. He could only hear the soft sounds of waves crashing into each other. He always loved that gentle yet harsh noise. And with that, something else also filled his ears. Where did you go? He tried to ignore the words that he was hearing. We miss you, sailor. Simon covered his ears. It was just nonsense. We will be on standby. And suddenly, Simon woke up with a snap. Based on the moonlight shining through the round glass window, a few hours had passed. The sleeping person on the top bed shifted, raining down a thick layer of dust right on Simon's face. Ugh. Somehow, Simon managed to sit through that damned boat ride for the next 2 weeks. He barely swept between his unintelligible dreams and the constant snoring of other passengers. Simon sighed with relief when they finally reached land, but it was short-lived as he realized he had nowhere to go. Je suis un tel idiot, he muttered. There was no way to turn back now. Again, Simon sighed to himself and wondered what to do next. With absolutely no sense of the local whereabouts, Simon just decided to walk and see where that would find him. Simon looked up at some street signs, looking for any enticing locations to visit. Oddly enough, though, he felt a pair of eyes on him. Simon looked over his shoulder, but no one seemed to be looking at him. Staring, always staring. Sudden panic set in. No, everything is fine. How silly of me. They're always watching, everywhere. Simon felt sick to his stomach. Multiple voices swarmed and argued as he just tried to settle himself. He needed somewhere familiar, somewhere safe. Waikiki Beach. Well, that worked. Simon traipsed over to the beach and gazed out upon the water. God, he missed the water. Despite being on a ship for the past 2 weeks, he didn't really get to enjoy what he loved the most. Simon got close to the shore and decided to sit down, clicking open his suitcase. He reached inside and pulled out that sailor's cap he hadn't worn in years at that point. It was a little worn from the times of working on his father's ship, but that was okay. Simon lightly brushed the top of the cap with his sleeve. Luckily, the beautiful embroidery of the Stella Octangula was still fully intact. He held it in his hands, feeling unsure of his decision to travel to Hawaii. He thought about his father. Papa. His thumbs dug into the cap's thick fabric. Simon thought about the song he used to sing in front of the crew. It made him sad now. He wasn't sure if his voice was up to the task of replaying it. He had aged, and he wasn't sure his throat could handle the high-pitched soprano anymore. Regardless. Adieu, papa, mon papa, j'ai pâté sous les étoiles. Mon papa, les cieux sont sombres. Et si je ne reviens jamais, souviens-toi de moi dans ton cœur. Mon papa, mon papa. It hurt too much to continue. Wet tears dripped onto his hat. Simon sniffled and wiped his eyes dry. He didn't even want to think of it anymore. It was too painful now. Simon willed himself to forget everything leading up to this very moment. His teeth gritted against each other, causing a horrible grind. Simon grasped the sand below him, squeezing a handful. The sharp dust poked into his palm, but the pain was oddly nice. Simon was so distracted by his own ire, he didn't notice he was followed. You have a wonderful voice. Simon jumped up and staggered backwards, almost stumbling into the water. A woman. Oh, I didn't mean to scare you. She extended a hand. The thought swarmed back. This can't be real. This can't be real. Simon had an extended blink, just to make sure his mind wasn't playing tricks on him. A sense of panic struck him again, making him feel sick. She looked like... Mister? The strange woman got his attention again. Without waiting for him to grab her hand this time, the woman gently helped him up from the shorebed. Have I really frightened you that bad? It looks as if you've seen a ghost, she joked. Simon wanted to defend his cowardice, but no words formed at the tip of his tongue. Do you speak English, mister? Yes, was all Simon could squeak out. The woman smiled at his nervous response. She had coily black hair, almond eyes, and a lovely skin tone that Simon found striking. She adorned a floral sundress along with a woven hat. Simon exhaled out a breath he hadn't known he'd been holding. My name is Stella, she finally introduced. How about you? Simon looked back down at his cap for a moment, brushing his fingers over the embroidery. Simon Minor. He almost responded in the tone of a question, like he himself didn't even know the answer. May I sit with you, Simon Minor? Simon just looked at her, not sure of what to say. But after a few seconds he nodded and sat in the sand with her. Simon tried to calm his nerves by looking out to the crashing waves. Who was this Stella, and why was she sitting with him? In California, the people scorned him and would seek him out just to show their hatred. Would this be the same? Is it all an elaborate joke? I was watching you at the harbor. Simon snapped to look at her, furrowing his brows. Those eyes! So he wasn't imagining things after all. Forgive me. Stella nervously put her hand up to her mouth. I find the ships so fascinating. I can't help but to watch them pull into the pier all day. Simon looked at her, not impressed with the current excuse. I watch hundreds of ships. Thousands of souls walk to the harbor every day, but you, she paused, you just felt different. Looked different, I mean. So lost and nervous. I needed to know what troubled you. Simon shuffled and looked down into the sand. He got lost in the texture for a moment. He couldn't bring himself to respond. It was too much to reveal all at once. Simon's heart ached. That's okay, Stella responded before he got the chance to. You don't have to tell me. He breathed out, looked relieved. "How about something simpler?" she proposed. "Where did you emigrate from?" Simon took a soothing breath. "France. Oh, well, I mean California." He bit his tongue at the embarrassing stutter. "I was born in France, but moved to California, then came here," he corrected. He darted his eyes up to see that Stella was smiling at him. Simon didn't know why, but he felt he could trust her. Something about her demeanor, or perhaps her soft appearance. She did seem a little familiar, but from what Simon couldn't bring himself to recall. "So," she responded, "that's where your accent is from." Simon nervously cleared his throat. Where do you come from?" Stella giggled. "Well, if it wasn't obvious, I'm Hawaiian." Simon suddenly felt a little stupid for asking. "But I was born in Laie," she added. Simon darted his eyes back down. Stella held a look of pity for him before speaking again. "Since you're new," she said, raising Simon's head again, "someone has to show you where everything is." Stella stood up from the sand and reached out her hand to Simon. Simon shakily took it and stood up himself. Stella gave him the most pleasant smile he'd ever seen. His stomach buzzed in a weird way, not with sickness like before, but still unpleasantly twisted. Stella led Simon all around Honolulu. He didn't even know why he agreed to follow. Something was just calling to him. He stayed quiet and nodded as Stella showed him everything. "And this is the Alawai Canal, right next to Kalakua Avenue Bridge, see?" Simon patiently listened to everything she had to say. "Over the canal, there's another bridge over there, the Ala Moana Road." She pointed over to a street stretching over the water. Simon looked at it for a moment, letting the canal reflect in his blue eyes. "I thought you might like that. Your cap is a captain's cap, right?" "Oh, Simon fumbled with the hat that he was still grabbing onto. It's just a sailor's cap my father gave to me when I was a child. It's nothing special." His lips twitched at that last addition to his statement. Simon didn't want to admit that this worn-out hat was his most prized possession at the moment. "Well, I like it," Stella smiled. "What's that on the front of it?" The Stella Octangula." Simon tripped over his words. Stella Octangula. She danced that word in her mind for a bit. "Just like me." Simon smiled at her. He caught himself, shaking his head slightly. For what felt like the first time in his life, he felt good. Yeah, it was good. He was almost confused at the fact, assuming himself to just be the type of person to be mopey. But this time wasn't like all the others, as Simon had previously thought. He'd only just met this woman a couple hours ago, but he felt safe around her. Simon's guard lowered, allowing himself to be open around the stranger. Now walking over to the Ala Moana Road Bridge, Simon and Stella sat on the edge, looking down at the ships floating under them. They were small boats, probably not for cargo or anything that was like his father's job. Simon recognized some types and pointed them out to Stella. She listened and smiled all the way through. Simon thought that he enjoyed this newfound friend of his. As the afternoon fell into twilight, Stella stood up and announced that she had to leave for the night. "I hate to leave so soon, but I have to head home," she sighed. "Here, meet me tomorrow at Fort Street, where it intersects with South King Street. Have you got that?" Simon nodded again, committing the names to memory. Stella began to walk away, but looked back at Simon one more time. "Aloha, Simon. It was a pleasure to meet you." "Aloha."